Good morning and welcome to today's Sunday Times GenNext webinar discussion. This conversation is the first of our 2022 digital conversation series in partnership with Yellowwood. Now, in its 18th year, the Sunday Times GenNext is the leading annual youth brand preference and consumer behavior event. Today, we're discussing all things youth and brands. How do today's youth connect with and consume brands? What drives loyalty and purchases for the youth of South Africa? In a country with a population of almost 60 million people, more than half of whom are under the age of 29, South Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world. So, it's clear that marketers and brands have to listen to the youth and seek ways to authentically connect with them. Please use the hashtag #STGenNext and join in on the conversation on social media. A conversation as we discuss the topic, Flourish or Flounder, in a world of ever-changing beauty and fashion trends. It is with great pleasure and excitement that I introduce and welcome our panel for today's discussion, a panel of esteemed marketers, youth, and brand leaders. We are joined by Masabia Jagat, a member of the Junior Board of Directors and an account manager at the APO Group. Angel Ndlela, an influencer, content creator, and artist. Sahil Harilal, the group fashion editor at Arena Holdings, and Priscilla Kalageropoulos, who is the head of creative and productions for Avon South Africa. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. All right, let's get started. Masabia, we'll start with you. As our resident youth representative and a member of the Junior Board of Directors, what do you think drives the youth perception and preference of brands today?
Hi, Ruby. I definitely think that's something you mentioned earlier about the population of youth, and there's so many contributing factors, and there's been a significant change in the youth. We've moved past the concept of just being focused on cheap and trending. Youth's perception and preferences are now driven by how we can relate to the brand, how we feel, how does the brand make us feel? What are they doing to serve our environment? What are they doing to serve our economy? Are the brands supporting animal cruelty and abuse of child exploitation, or are they supporting good causes? How are they giving back to society? And the image of the brand amongst the youth is through the experiences of the brand. If we receive negative feedback from others, we take a deep dive into that. We look at it and then we either stop supporting the brand or we call the brand out. So the image of the brand is really from others' experiences and the most important issues and how that brand is contributing to society. These significant mentions really do drive our perceptions and our preferences. And based on that, we then make informed decisions of who we're going to support and how we're going to support that brand.
So you would say it's more than just about the product. It's about, your purchasing decisions being driven by a socially conscious approach by brands. It's about sustainability, it's about ethics, it's about fair trade, It's more than just the product for the youth of today.
Yes, most definitely. We're far beyond that, just looking at the product, and if it's cheap and trending, we're more into, looking at what it's really doing for us, how they're changing, the world, because we've had this big shift from COVID and we've placed different importances on things, and it's really, really changed from when it was even 5 years ago to what it is today.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, taking into account the fact that we have a more socially conscious youth and that many brands, by virtue of that, are changing to more influencer marketing approaches as opposed to the former above-the-line traditional marketing, Angel, as a brand influencer and content creator, you yourself have first-hand knowledge of the increase of brands adopting influencer marketing strategies to really relate with and connect with the youth. What are some of the influencer marketing trends at the moment, specifically ones targeted to the youth?
Thank you so much for having me on this panel. More than anything, I feel like the influencer sort of career, because for a lot of people, it has become a career, was looked down upon for the longest time until brands started realizing that the social media is actually where the marketing is. And by using influencers, they use us in order to get their products out there and things like that. But more than anything, from a first-hand experience, I've realized that we aren't taken seriously. But as of late, it is something that has become a career for a lot of people.
And how do you think that brands actually benefit in terms of relating to the youth authentically by using influencers such as yourself?
I think more than anything, a lot of the youth is on social media. And the more that brands, send us their products or they want us to market their products, it gets to the youth quicker. Whereas in old times, we used to use radio, not that has been completely discarded, but we used to use radio and television. Now it's more social media. Everybody's on their phone. So that is an easier way of getting your products as a brand to the youth and the population at large.
Yeah, so definitely is more, I think, relatability and accessibility by actually using influencers in terms of big brands marketing approaches. It is said that influencer marketing is the modern day's word of mouth. And I just want to talk to someone who has definitely. And Sahil, as someone who is, has a lot of experience in the youth market as well as the fashion industry, as the group fashion editor at Arena Holdings, you know all about the ever-evolving, changing consumption trends of today's youth. What are some of the lifestyle, digital, and tech trends that are impacting the youth of today? Sahil?
Sorry. Hi, Ruby. Thanks so much. I'm going to answer you in 3 separate parts, one of them being lifestyle, digital, and tech. The lifestyle trend that I'm going to focus on is going to be gender fluidity, the breaking down of the gender binary. There are only 2 options, and luxury brands are more than willing to offer non-binary products. Chanel has just released a range of male makeup, aptly called Boy de Chanel. And there's been an incredible surge in male grooming from Tom Ford to Smashbox that are all marketed as gender fluid or as makeup for men, with gender ambiguous figures not being seen as fringe, but rather quite celebrated. There's a softer, more romantic masculinity that's coming forth. People like Timothée Chalamet, Jaden Smith, A$AP Rocky, and brands like Jacquemus and Gucci, they blur the lines between traditional masculinity and femininity. The digital trend that I want to talk about is total transparency, which actually led to cancel culture. There is an iron backbone of egalitarianism that the youth hold absolute highest. Accountability and transparency is as valued as the product, whether it's a Victoria's Secret complete rebranding after anti-trans remarks, or an Estée Lauder executive that got fired after posting a racist COVID meme. There is an absolute understanding that the ethos of a brand and the ethos of the people behind that brand is as important as the final product. And the final thing that I want to talk to about tech is it starts with the fabric of the clothing themselves. Brands like Tebe Magugu locally created a fabric that killed viruses in the height of a COVID-19 pandemic. We're also looking at things like lab-grown ethical leather and even synthetic spider silk coming through from Stella McCartney. From 10,000 liters to create a single pair of denim, enormous energy is being used, and fashion is actively searching for ways to minimize its ecological footprint in the spirit of advancement. And it doesn't start with campaigns or even shopping habits. It starts within the garments themselves. Another way that fashion and tech are starting to merge is through health. Clothing that can change temperature, or clothing that can monitor your heart rate or blood pressure, even suits that the elderly can use to help stand up and maintain proper posture. Digital printing clothing is also going to be coming through quite a lot, which minimizes a lot of the external factors used to create clothing and used to create waste.
Thank you, Sahil. I mean, that was a very in-depth, explanation of kind of the trends that the youth are being impacted by. And I think the main takeaways are definitely that the youth of today are brave. They're really wanting to challenge gender norms. They really want transparency from brands. And in fact, they demand it. It's about the product, it's about the fabric, it's about sustainability. And I think the main takeaway is that the youth of today are driven by values. And brands also have to adapt to really putting their values at the forefront in able to actually relate to the youth of today. So
Absolutely,
we've heard
yes.
we've heard from our fashion editor, we've heard from our content creator, and we've heard from our resident youth representative on today's panel. And now it's time to hear from the brand representative. So Priscilla, as someone who represents brand producers, specifically a beauty brand such as Avon, that really champions inclusivity and innovation, how does your brand use e-commerce as an opportunity to appeal to the youth of today?
Hi, Ruby, and thank you for this opportunity, and hi to all the viewers today. I want to use the word e-commerce because I think it's quite a loose term. I don't think in its entirety e-commerce itself is something that we should be looking at as the opportunity. It's rather part of the ecosystem and the journey in which the consumer itself is influenced by a purchase decision. So I think with brands, I mean, the e-commerce is just the experience. I want to call it the pseudo retail experience, for lack of a better word, but that's where the end state is for the consumer once she's gone through the journey with you as a brand. Once she's gone through all the considerations where she's been engaged from all the other tools like your social media campaigns, your influencer campaigns, your what you stand for, what you resonate for as a brand. And once she's been hooked in one of those platforms, or at least engaged with your brand through the journey, the e-commerce itself is where then she makes her end decision. So I think it is still very relevant. How you make it appeal to her is making sure that you understand that it is an ecosystem. So having multiple touch points for the consumer during that ecosystem is what's going to make sure that she stays with you as a brand and resonates.
And what points, or touch points rather, do you feel specifically resonate with the youth of today in your experience?
Gosh, it's going to be very relevant and very much around an individual. So I think depending on who your exact audience is, you're obviously going to curate your content that is going to be very targeted to that consumer, to what her needs are. I think as a brand like us, we're very fortunate in the sense that we do a lot of research. We really want to get into the hearts and minds and understand our customers from all angles, knowing that the youth are the biggest, not only from a financial spend point of view, but also from an economy factor. They are the biggest in terms of the targeted audience you want to try and be appealing to and remain relevant in that space. So from just looking at the research, what we are able to do is curate the content, making sure that we're constantly challenging what it is that we're putting out there, what is it that we're trying to connect with, what are the messages that that the consumer wants to hear and really connect with. I think Musabia has mentioned that right in the beginning, where she said it's more than just I'm a brand that does X. But am I standing for my community? Am I relevant? Am I inclusive? Am I, making sure that my products are ethically made. We're not testing on animals, etc., etc., etc. And I think it's so important that you realize that a brand stands for all of those things, and how you curate your message, again, part of my ecosystem, how you put it and portray it is going to resonate differently with your audience, not only from a targeting point of view, but at each point, she needs to be able to come back in and feel that you're at least addressing all of those particular, I want to call them check boxes, that are so relevant for the youth today before they make a considered choice in a brand.
And it's really encouraging to hear that a brand such as Avon really does care about the individual and puts time and research into, really trying to get into understanding the hearts and minds, as you said, of the youth of today. So circling back to you, Musabia, as our youth representative on the panel, why do you feel that it is important for brands to portray real meaning in their marketing? And how does being truly authentic gain the trust and loyalty of the youth of today?
Thanks, Ruby. They often say that real is rare, and we live in a very online world. And we almost went through this phase where everyone wanted to be perfect for social media, but there's this complete shift. We want to portray a life that is filled with realism and reality, and with all its imperfections. And especially, when it comes to, we look to content creators, if they've shown us that, they've been through depression or whatever it is, it makes us feel that we are not alone. So over time, we've realized that, not everyone is the same. We all have issues, we all have imperfections, and that honesty is a true reflection of life. And it's so important for brands to, portray that authenticity, because we then feel total inclusion. So there's no better feeling when you see a brand that uses models that have all sizes or colors or races or body types. And it goes the same for, whether it be a brand or a TV series. It's irrespective, because you feel like you're part of something bigger. And personally, I always struggle because I've always been a curvy girl. And previously, when I was younger, I didn't have that. Whereas now we have that shift, and it really makes me so happy. When you see models that are bigger sized, you get happy because that's the reality. And that also makes us feel that, that brand is being honest. That brand is stepping out. That brand is real. And it brings back to the point where you don't have to be perfect to fit into society, because society isn't perfect. So we then find it so easy to relate to that brand merely from them being honest in just their small things like their marketing. And then we say, we feel included by that brand. So we give them our trust. When they do something, even if it's not correct, we say, but they've done 10 million things right. This was just one thing that wasn't thought through. We don't write the brand off. We give them a second chance, because we can feel proud and say, yes, they made a bad decision now, but let's think about all the other good times. So they just need to work on who they've employed for that campaign or whatever it is. And just based on visual marketing, we're a very visual generation. We gain our trust from easy things. Show us that you show us, don't tell us. And that's what I always say. And when we instantly feel proud, we instantly feel good, we can instantly, say, hey, I'm proud to support that brand. Our loyalty is there.
I love what you said in terms of real is rare. And I think it really shows that the youth of today are really challenging brands to really step up to the plate and actually show us what they value and really stand to it from, the top to the lower ends of their business. So Musabia, you did mention, that obviously, you may be a curvier girl, and obviously as a young woman of color, what are some of the things that brands do in their marketing approaches, specifically fashion and beauty brands, that really show you that what they are doing in terms of inclusivity is authentic, like that it is real and that it isn't just a gimmick to, check that box that, okay, we've spoken to this specific market?
Definitely when they use models from, like you said, all different colors or different sizes, stretch marks. Like before, if that was literally, I think 10 years ago, I'd be like, no, you can't have that model. She has stretch marks. We've made that, we've adapted that and we've said, hey, you know what? This is the reality. Everyone has stretch marks. It makes you feel proud. It makes you feel good. As well as skin conditions. A lot of people have skin conditions. I know I used to have eczema when I was younger. You never saw that in a model. Brands are stepping out. They're showing you, hey, it's fine if you have this condition. It's fine if you have acne. We're not all perfect, but this is what you can use to make yourself feel better if you'd like to, or this is the products where we can help you. And that really makes you feel good. And I love it. I seriously love it, because I'll support a brand that doesn't only show me a model that is the typical model. We've moved past that. Show me different models, because we all have different bodies. It's not like we're all the same piece of paper. So, yeah.
And I love what you said, because I think it really touches on what Hill mentioned earlier in terms of the youth of today really wanting to break barriers, change molds, and really disrupt the industry today. So circling back to Angel, as our resident content creator on the panel, who actually benefits from authenticity when you are creating content, do you resonate with anything that Musabia has said?
Oh, yes, definitely. I actually wrote down a couple of points. I think one of something very profound that she mentioned is being a curvy girl, because I was also a curvy girl, and in school I was bullied quite a bit. But when I got into Instagram, early Instagram, I'm talking 2013, when Instagram was still, very superficial than it is now, and more sort of picture driven, sort of lifestyle driven, where now it's more business driven and people really take their accounts seriously. So back then, she did mention that being a curvy girl was very difficult. And when now that social media is evolving, it's very inclusive. And you find that she mentioned that a lot of models aren't the typical, petite girl. We are also included in that. And just to add that, the response that brands are giving influencers, they value our opinion and they value whatever we sort of put out and say that this is how much, maybe let's say, this is how much money I'll charge you for a post or whatever the case might be. So I really appreciate how far the influencer sort of space has come in that sense, with the relationships between the brands and the influencers.
I think it really is an exciting time, because you can see that now that brands are actually valuing the voices of content creators and influencers who actually understand their audience more than the brand can. That it's a really exciting time for marketing, especially in the beauty and fashion space.
Yeah, definitely.
And over to you, Sahil. So just circling back, from your expert experience, if you had to describe the new youth fashion and beauty consumer of today, how would you describe them?
So this consumer is a product of a completely digital world. All they've known is boundless information and boundless virtual exploration. As a result, like you said, they are formidable rule breakers and complete trailblazers. What I found is that this generation is very interested in newness and in progress. Anything that is developmental or boundary pushing is quite essential. But at the same time, newness and novelty can also be found in vintage items. And as we've seen, a huge insurgence in vintage products, from vintage clothing to vintage jewelry. But I think ultimately, what this generation is looking for is to find that perfect balance between a product that is well made and delivers exactly on what it's supposed to do, that is found at the perfect price point.
I think it's a tricky thing for brands nowadays, because a lot of them can struggle to really distinguish themselves in a market that really challenges them to do better and be better, behind the scenes and what they show to their audiences. So it's an interesting time. And I think, Priscilla, this is a perfect time for you to kind of let us know this new consumer that, challenges brands. that really enjoys newness, that is on the peak of the digital age and digital transformation. How do you use, digital opportunities in 2022 to really relate to this youth? And how do you really stand aside and stand out to the youth of today?
Yeah, it's going to be quite a mix of factors. So absolutely, it's about going back to your marketing principles, constantly challenging your portfolio, challenging are the products servicing the needs of the consumer, going back to the research which I mentioned before. The use of social media, the use of digital platforms, etc. are, again, it's going to be an evolution, constantly challenging yourself as a brand as to, am I staying relevant in that space? Am I adapting fast enough and being relevant for the consumers in this space? And then I suppose the biggest is the message. And circling back to, again, what Musabia has mentioned earlier around brands resonating and showing that they're more inclusive. I think I'm very proud to be with a company that in 2019 decided to change its vision and its brand identity with its Watch Me Now campaign, which was all about inclusivity, where they've removed all models that were not everyday models, where they challenge the status quo to say, women's beauty is not it's not the old school tradition of what was perceived beauty. Beauty is everyone. Beauty is beyond what was, which was an ideal that was falsely placed, which is great because it shows that inclusivity. So again, I suppose it's the messaging, and if it resonates with the consumer, and it's priced affordably, and the product is going to deliver on the promise, and it's very conveniently found, online, and is something that is servicing their need, I think you stay relevant within the space, and especially for the youth.
And, I think it's wonderful that you've touched on some of Avon's messages in terms of hashtag My Story Matters, hashtag Watch Me Now, and really the emphasis that you're putting on inclusivity, on, breaking gender norms, and just in terms of being more diverse. And I mean, Avon has placed the first in the coolest makeup brand category over the last few years. So I guess, there's a reason for that. You're definitely putting effort into it. So Musabia, you have the stage now. Imagine that you have the attention of every brand and marketer for the next 2 minutes. What do they need to do to better connect with the youth of South Africa?
Ruby, understand us. We keep saying that, yeah, we're going to understand the youth, but do it. Stop saying we're going to do it. Actually do it. We always considered as the young, broke, lazy generation. That needs to stop, because we actually really have power in financial and, from our social media presence. So often, because I'm very short, I walk into stores and restaurants, and now because of the mask, I look really young. And there's no seriousness. And even in restaurants, sometimes they don't pay attention to you until you actually purchase something or sit down, and then they see the color of our card, which is really bad. Then there's a whole different, attention being given. So even though we're playful, listen to us. It's important. Talk to us. Make things relatable. I'm so tired of seeing adverts where there's only speaking to an older generation. Youth ranges from very wide age groups, from 14 to 35. At each age group, you're at a different stage in your life. When you're 14, 18, 26, and 35, you're at very different points. So adverts need to be more relatable, and not just say we want to look at the youth. We need to pick on age groups and then target that way. Make us more inclusive, make it more relevant, educate us, not just push that idea and say we're sustainable. We're beyond that, just saying, okay, we're sustainable. We want to know how you're sustainable and what you're doing to be sustainable and what you're doing to stay relevant. We also have grown up with almost being impatient because everything's at our fingertips. When I was younger, I'd have to look in the dictionary to spell a word. I just say, hey, Siri, and I can say whatever word I want, and it's typed out. We're so impatient. And it's almost made us, have like a shorter attention span. We don't want to watch an advert for 5 minutes. We want something that's short. That's why they made reels. We want something that's impactful. Once we've watched that, we're like, whoa, after, a few minutes, not after, well, seconds rather than 5 minutes. And social media feeds and stories is so important. The influencer content, like mentioned before, is huge. Brands must pay attention to that and really understand and focus on that. And, but also, like Angel said, listen to their content creators, but also understand that, there needs to be an advertising balance and not just be focused on social media. There has to be that balance because we're almost everywhere. That makes sense.
I completely hear you and resonate with everything you've said. And I think the main takeaway really is listen to us. That is all the youth want. Listen to us, hear us, have us in your boardrooms, have us on your panels, and don't speak for us, but speak to us so that you're able to really relate and resonate with us as the youth. So circling back to you, Angel, I'll do the same that I did to Musabia. You have the stage. Imagine you have the attention of every brand manager, every marketer in the beauty and fashion space for the next 2 minutes. What do you think that they can do to better support you as a content creator so that you can really resonate with the youth of today? As someone with, a vast amount of experience in brand campaigns and someone with over 200,000 followers, you definitely are a trusted voice in the youth market.
I think that Musabia mentioned relatability and relevance. I've found that a lot of brands, even with myself, that they don't really pick the correct influences with the correct audience. So I think it's very important for brands not to go for likes or your followers, because I've also found that I will receive a campaign from a brand that I don't really resonate with, but because the brand is huge and I want to be recognized, you end up being coerced into working with them. So I think it's very important for the brands to specifically and carefully choose the influencers that they want to work with. Secondly, I would really appreciate it if brands included micro influencers. So these are people with a very small audience, but that is guaranteed that if you work with that particular person, your brand or whatever you're trying to push will get to the correct audience. Whereas, for example, a person like myself who's a macro influencer and has a lot of followers, if I do work with a brand that doesn't really resonate with who I am and what I stand for, then it would just really be a waste of a campaign. Also, inclusivity. I've found that, like she mentioned earlier on, the curvy girls, I think that has always been a huge problem where there's a specific type of person that is sort of glorified, for lack of a better word, and to include different races, to include different age groups, like Musabia mentioned, and not to be weird or anything, but there was a recent event that took place. And in that particular event, there were no Indian people at that event. And there were a couple of people who complained on Twitter because the brand, or rather the campaign itself, was centered around a lot of Indian people, but no Indian people were at the actual launch of the campaign. So maybe for brands to really look at those things, I would really appreciate that.
I completely hear you. And I think especially in terms of the notes of when brands are looking to do influencer marketing or seek out content creators such as yourself, it's more than just about reach, numbers, and likes. It's more about engagement. It's about, looking into nano as well as micro influencers that have a niche content creation style that really know their audience on an individual basis and may actually have more influence over their audience's purchasing power than, let's say, someone who has, 1 million plus, where maybe their audience don't truly resonate with their content. Is that correct?
Yes, just to add to that, it's extremely uncomfortable to see, for example, a person who we all know drinks champagne sort of promoting beer. It just doesn't make sense to us. And also, especially beauty brands that use a girl with flawless skin or maybe with makeup on. We look at that and we're like, okay, what exactly are we promoting here? So those are the things that they really need to look into, you know?
I definitely agree. And I think on that note, I really want to encourage everyone tuned in and the audience watching today to participate on social media in this conversation using the hashtag #STGenNext. And we also have a live Q&A chat box. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts so that we can engage with you on a live basis. So I want to tie back and circle back to you, Priscilla. Just touching on what Musabia and Angel have both said in terms of, what brands can do to relate to the youth, choosing the right influencers. I know that Avon, does make use of influencer marketing. And I just wondered, do you have any thoughts in terms of, the selection and inclusivity, diversity, the type of rollouts or platforms that you might select to really make sure that you're doing a job of being real and transparent, and making sure that you are resonating with the youth market of today via influencer marketing?
Ruby, it's a really excellent question, and I was smiling along the way when Angel was speaking because a lot of that does resonate with us as a brand. I think I do want to just point out that with a brand like Avon, yes, we do have the master brand, but we also have so many smaller categories and smaller brands, and each of them really do connect with different consumers along different ages and along different life cycles. But when we are doing that job and really pushing the message on what we would like to call our hero products and our hero propositions that we really do focus on, that's in those particular categories, in those particular brands, that is what we try do to the best of our ability, is really look for influencer strategies that aren't just trying to find someone with the biggest amount of followers, but it is to try and find more relevant, more macro, nano influencers that are connecting with the brand, having real conversations, real experiences, because we do believe in that authenticity. We do believe that we're actually learning ourselves, and at the same time that the message is coming across more authentic and is getting a different kind of reach, as opposed to just looking at it from a number. I mean, we're underway now with hopefully initiating a new influencer strategy and really starting to see a lot bigger legs and a lot bigger growth in that sphere, because we truly do believe that that is the way of the future. The wider, the bigger, and the more strategic our influencer strategies can be, with as big of a brand as we are, is really going to help, put a lot more impetus on us as a brand and a lot more awareness. Not that we need it, we really do luckily survive in a very high space of awareness. We're very fortunate as a brand, but we want to continue doing the right job. We want to continue doing and servicing the needs of the consumer through research and making our propositions a lot more beneficial to our audiences. Yeah, I mean, I was smiling because I really do resonate with that, and I do agree. I think when you're putting the wrong face on a product, it really is more brand diminishing than it is beneficial to you as a brand.
I definitely agree. And I think what I've taken away from your response is that it's all about authenticity and relevance, and really finding the balance between those two factors. So tying back to you, Sahil, as a fashion editor, someone who has a lot of experience in the industry, and someone who has seen all angles. I mean, you've seen the content creation side, you've seen specifically from the youth and what they think and their thoughts. And then you've also seen many brands go from being extremely relevant to no longer relevant at all. So with that line of sight, what would you say are some of the, must-have kind of fashion items or fashion trends for the youth of today? Also taking into account the conversation that we've had in terms of inclusion and diversity.
Right, absolutely. That is such a good question, and it really is one of my favorite ones to answer. Having, being stuck at home for the last 2 years, people's wardrobes went through a period of petrification. Our clothing just kind of sat. Then I would go to my clothing and I would look at it and I would touch it. I'd be like, one day I'll get to wear you again. And I think the Oscars red carpet showed that people are so excited to simply be in beautiful clothing simply for the sake of. The idea that you have to wait for an occasion to dress up or wear your favorite perfume or wear your favorite lipstick is slowly sort of waning away. If something gives you joy, wear it, use it. That is the point of you having that item. To answer your question, what do I think is going to be the next hot fashion item? You know, it can vary so incredibly, from the giant Balenciaga puffers to the Valentino pink couture shows. The joy of fashion is in its mercurial nature. It's impossible to have a wardrobe that mirrors every single trend that comes out forever. So we don't try to. We try to look our best with our current understanding of what's in fashion at the time. And I think the must-have fashion item at the moment is really a rock and roll attitude. It's looking for brands that, like you said, empower. You want a brand that looks at its consumers and say, we understand what you want, which is what everyone has said before. Try to understand us. Especially with a demographic that's as headstrong as this one, they will wear what they want to wear. And I think that what we really should try and champion is to find power in your uniqueness, and to champion brands that look at you and say, everything about you that is once off, that makes you you, we're going to champion that.
I think, you know, as cliche as it may sound, what I get from what you're saying is that the, you know, must-have fashion item, you know, for the youth of today is their personality, themselves, and just,
absolutely,
you know, rocking their inner beauty. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Absolutely.
So I just want to, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you do have some shoulder pads for us, but, you know, you're completely rocking the inner self. So just tying back to Priscilla, I just want to ask, in terms of everything that we've discussed today, what are some of the more unlikely marketing streams that you're tapping into so that you can really reach the youth of today?
It's an excellent question. And I think some, you know, with the state of affairs and, you know, the pandemic and now the unfortunate war, a lot of things have slowed down in terms of really accelerating in that sector. What we have been able to do outside of the norms of just approaching and really focusing your efforts more from traditional media to now more the influencer / digital type of ecosystem that I was referring to before, introducing of AR technologies and tools which are allowing that convenience in that space of consumers, you know, really immersing themselves with brands and trying them on. Not that it's new, but I suppose with big brands like us, we can commoditize those kind of platforms to allow consumers to really play around in this artificial world. I think what we can look forward to seeing in the future, and hopefully, you know, we won't be far behind as a global company, is really looking at the metaverse and how do we start engaging in that sphere. I think Sahil will know that that in the metaverse, they just launched their first fashion week in the metaverse, and big brands have already started buying space and NFTs and start selling skins. So I suppose that is the future. Hopefully we can start really as brands considering what that means and how we become relevant there before it becomes really something big. But yeah, that's the most unlikely place that I can see us going in the future.
I mean, it really is ever evolving. So I guess brands today really have to be as adaptable as possible because, you know, we're going into the world of AI and NFTs and the metaverse. So you really have to keep on your toes and make sure that you know what's happening on the ground. Cool. So I just want to tie into Masabia and just find out from you, in terms of traditional above-the-line communication, TV, magazines, radio, the traditional way, do you think these forms of communication still work for the youth of today?
Ruby, I think that, you know, you really have to look at what you are promoting. I wouldn't say that they don't work, but I do think that you can't only have one form. You can't only have a magazine advertisement, because personally, I don't know when was the last time I actually purchased a magazine, a physical hard copy, even though, sometimes when I used to stand in the long lines at the supermarket, I would flip through one. These days, I don't even want to after COVID. I just touch my own phone. So when I do look at content, everything is online, which is almost scary because it's pushed away, that whole industry of print. But saying that, you really have to look at the different demographics. In South Africa, we have so many different, social classes, which I don't like to say, but it is the reality. And the spending power from each different youth is very different. So you do need to be, a brand that is all inclusive and looking at different ways. But I think that most important is you must include social media and something else. You can't just focus on one and not the other, because then you're neglecting it, if that makes sense.
I completely hear you. And I think, youth culture today is constantly evolving. And, Gen Z are disrupting industries, but we also have to take into account that, especially in a country such as South Africa, that a lot of the youth actually don't have digital literacy or access to certain, devices. So also making sure that we are moving with the times, but we are also staying grounded in the realities of our society today. So, we've heard incredible industry and consumer insights from everyone on the panel today. Some keywords that have stood out are authenticity, loyalty, transparency, values, and sustainability. We know that influencer marketing is quickly becoming more and more popular and valued by brands, producing higher ROI by the day. We know that inclusivity is impacting brands and how they market to the youth of today. So just as a final takeaway, I'd like to ask our panel to answer just in one or two sentences, what do brands need to do in order to flourish in the youth market today? And what are some future opportunities that you foresee? Angel?
I think I've already mentioned, like, the relatability is so important because, like Masabia mentioned, that youth starts from about 14 till about 35. So the type of influencer that you do pick needs to sort of portray or relay the message that you're trying to put out there. And in terms of futuristically, what I'm seeing is Instagram, or rather, for me, it's more Instagram more than anything. I've seen that it's actually becoming a business where all of us, our economy is fluctuating horrendously. We're not getting jobs. The unemployment rates are ridiculous. I myself have become a business person out of being an influencer. So I think futuristically, I just see that Instagram and
So I think the main takeaway in terms of what Angel was saying,
something that is just and go.
Yes. So completely all about relatability and definitely the discussion we've been having today. Sahil, what do you think brands need to do in order to flourish in the youth market today?
I think that there's going to be an increasing look towards mental and physical health. I think that brands need to look at health and wellness as being almost part of the product offering. If I'm investing my money into a brand and into a piece of clothing, I need to know that it fulfills more than just its basic need. What are the consequences to me putting my money towards this brand? What sort of social initiatives do they have? I think that brands need to show their consumers that if you support us, you are also supporting these causes that are closest to your hearts.
So if you want my money, you also have to support my causes and what I care about.
Absolutely.
And you, Priscilla, as someone from the brand side yourself, in just one sentence, what do you feel brands need in order to flourish in the youth market today?
So I think I said it before, but I think it's a matter of continuing to listen and continuing to make sure that we keep the consumer in the hearts and the minds of everything that we do, from our product to our portfolio to our messaging to what it is that we're putting out there. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to constantly challenge ourselves, challenge the status quo, and bring a brand to the fore that will continue to be relevant and continue to be loved and liked for all the many things like its sustainability, its inclusion, etc.
Yes, completely. And I think, Masavia, you've definitely, touched on this before, but if you just had to give us one or two words of, from a youth perspective, of how brands need to adapt in order to flourish in the youth market today, what would those keywords be?
I think taking away something from what everyone has said, and they've put it really nicely, and main for me is listen to us, invest in us. We really are the future. It's not just, oh, the youth is the future. Understand it, put it into perspective, live it, do it. That kind of mentality.
100%, live it, do it. And that makes me think of a quote from Jeremy Goldman, which is, listening is one of the most important things a brand can do online. If your brand is just broadcasting its own agenda, it isn't truly engaging in the conversation. So just to close off, I would like to thank our panel today for your incredible insights. Today, we were joined by Musabia, Angel, Sahil, and Priscilla. We just want to remind you to register for our next webinar, which will be all about what quality millennial talent can do for your brand. This will be on May the 17th from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we will see you for our next GenNext digital conversation. Thank you.